and welcome to day one of the Ragamuffin photo challenge. Hurrah, we're starting! I'm so excited. So we're starting off the challenge with the theme of get focused. So today I want to cover three little mini topics within the realm of get focused, and that's working with animals, using gizmos, and focusing your lens. So to start with, let's chat about working with animals. I guess I just want to preface with patience is really key. You have to be so patient when you're photographing pets. So it is really rare that the first time that I try to get a pet photographed, that they'll understand what it is that I'm trying to do on the first time. But after the third, second, wait, I went backwards, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time of repeating the same action, they start to understand what it is we're going for. Everything starts to click. So combining patience and repetition and just keeping everything calm and fun is my two biggest pieces of advice for you. Not only is it more enjoyable for your pet if everything's patient and calm, but I think you'll get a lot more out of it too. I recommend keeping your sessions short and sweet, and definitely remember to mix work and play. It stops them getting frustrated as well. So you always want to be watching out and making sure that your pet that you're photographing is feeling comfortable, they're not anxious, they're not nervous. In terms of how body language translates onto the actual photos, a couple things to keep in mind is whether or not their ears are up or down. Most people tend to prefer ears up, although I kind of like the Yoda look with them down as well. But just using, some noisemakers, gizmos, which we'll get onto in a second, that can help perk those ears up. And the directions of their eyes. So if they're looking straight at the camera, that tends to create a really compelling portrait, versus if they're looking sort of off camera, it's a little bit harder to connect with the subject that way. Gizmos can cover everything from treats, toys, noisemakers. I basically just use the term gizmos to refer to something that is grabbing the pet's attention. Now obviously all pets are unique and they all respond differently, but here are a few of my favorite gizmos that I like to take to sessions and that you might find helpful for your own pet photography too. I much prefer to use a treat like a schmacko that you can tear off into tiny little bits as you're photographing with your pet, rather than any sort of difficult to chew treat. You don't want to be sort of struggling to get a treat in half, and you obviously don't want to be giving them lots of giant treats. So yeah, something like schmackos or little milky sticks, they work really well. Now I personally have a whole bunch of different noisemakers, some like this. I think they're technically used for hunting, very different kind of shooting that I use them for, so I like using these, but you definitely don't need to go out and buy specific squeakers. You can, even if you have a very sad looking Dalmatian giraffe, any dog toy will have these little squeakers in them. So if he's already being torn apart, as this guy is, you'll find these little squeakers in there. And actually, if you take them apart, you can just pull out the squeaker bit, end bit there, and you can. Now, the key with toys is you want to keep something small that you can hold in your hand. There's no point having a giant toy like this, because one, it's going to be really difficult for you to hold it in your hand while you're trying to take the photo, and also that's a lot of toy for your dog to be looking at. We want to keep it small so that we can really focus their attention. Because the whole trick to the gizmo is that we hold it right above the lens. So whether or not you're shooting on a camera, or even if you were shooting on a smartphone, we just hold it above the lens there. We always want to keep those gizmos as close to the eye of the camera, as close to the lens as possible, because that creates the illusion that the dog was purposely looking into the camera. Focus essentially refers to the sharp parts of your photo, and even though it sounds simple, poor focus will totally ruin an otherwise good photo. So it's really important for us to nail your focus and get those sharp images so you can move on with the rest of the challenge. So what does out of focus / focus actually look like? Well, if you have a look at this photo, you'll see the first one I've taken is completely out of focus. So her whole face is blurry and you can't see any of the detail. Now, the second focus is slightly out of focus. This is where a lot of people land when they're first starting to learn photography. It's really easy to end up here, but just that little bit of missed focus makes it feel like you can't fully connect with the image. So a key rule to remember is to always focus on the eyes, or at least 9 times out of 10. If you are intentionally making a decision to focus elsewhere, that's awesome, love that. But if you're just creating a portrait, you want to make sure that the eyes are the main area in focus. Everything else can fall in and out of focus depending on your aperture, which we'll get into tomorrow. So first up with the camera, basically there are 3 stages to focusing. The first thing you want to do is half depress your shutter button. So you kind of half hold it down. Then you're going to wait for some sort of confirmation from your camera. Now that'll depend on your camera. It's different for all different camera models, but essentially you'll probably hear a beep, or you might see on the back of the screen or within the viewfinder a little square or lots of squares turn a different color, normally red. And so then once you've got that confirmation, then you can fully depress the shutter and it should take your photo. So rather than just quickly pressing and not allowing the focusing system to have time to search for what it's going to focus on, make sure you do that half press first and then a full depress, and that way your camera has time to take the photo. So with smartphone photography, basically what you want to do is tap the area of the frame that you want to be in focus. Probably it's going to be your pet's eyes, or at least their face, and then wait for the camera to focus. It normally sort of goes in and out a little bit unless it's already in focus, and then you take the photo. Rather than just using that camera button straight away, make sure you tap the area that you want to be in focus first. Now finally, let's wrap up today's lesson by chatting about the focus point, which is a small square within your frame that tells your autofocus system where to focus. You can change the autofocus area mode on your camera to take more control over this focus point. There are loads of different focusing modes, camera modes, that I definitely won't get into for this 5-day challenge. If you're interested in learning more about all this kind of stuff, I have a whole 6-week course about pet photography. But yeah, with autofocus area modes, we have 3 main types. We have the autofocus area modes, the single point autofocus area modes, and the expanded autofocus area modes. And for today, I want to chat to you about single point autofocus area modes. I hope no one's playing a drinking game where they have to drink every time I say auto. So basically, let me grab my camera. Different cameras will have a different number of these little dots that you can click on. It depends on your camera model. But basically, you can select to have a specific part of the camera's frame be in focus rather than having all of the frame in focus. So when you're on the autofocus area mode, the camera chooses from itself, from the entirety of the frame, where it thinks you will want to focus. Now with human photography, a lot of the time the camera gets it correct. But with pets, because the nose is prominent and ahead of their eyes, find that camera autofocus gets confused and it will focus on their nose instead. So you can utilize the single point autofocus area mode to move the little square so it is over one of their eyes. And then that way you're telling the camera very specifically, I want this area to be the sharpest point of the photo. So you again can actually do this with your phone just by positioning the little square specifically over your pet's eye. So that is the end of day 1. Let's get on to your assignment. Your assignment for today is called Get Focused. And the assignment is to take a photo of your pet looking directly at the camera. So you'll be using the gizmo to direct their attention to the lens, as close to the lens as possible. And you want to be as in focus as you can get to their eye. Next, you're going to post that photo as a comment below this video. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself, let me know your name and your pet's name, and maybe a little bit about why you're doing this challenge or what you love about pet photography. And then final part of the assignment is to leave a comment on someone else's images. So scroll on up and leave some positive feedback for another challenger. If you happen to be the first person commenting, you can go back to a previous day and leave a comment there instead. I hope you enjoyed day 1 of the Ragamuffin photo challenge. If you have any questions at all, or if you would like some specific feedback on your photos, you can submit your questions or your photos and I will answer those in the live Q&A later tonight, 6:30 p.m. Melbourne time tonight. Enjoy photographing with your pet today and I will see you later. Bye.